Good afternoon to everyone, and on behalf of the EPP, a very warm welcome to our virtual meeting. Today, our video interview will be hosted by Patrick Voller, EPP Secretary of External Relations, and by me, Julia Lissens, EPP Political Advisor. We will be speaking about the upcoming EU Western Balkan Summit, which will take place on the 6th of October in the framework of the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the Union. The EU and the Western Balkan leaders will gather to reaffirm and hopefully and clearly the European perspectives of the Western Balkans. The EPP will also organize its summit with the EU and Western Balkans leaders the day before on the 5th of October. Today, we are very pleased to have with us two excellent speakers, EPP Vice-President and Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, David McAllister. A very well welcome and thank you for your time. Majlinda Bregu, the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council. Thank you also for your time and a very well welcome. If I may, I would like to briefly introduce our honorable guests. David McAllister has been a key CDU political figure. He has been the Prime Minister of Lower Saxony for 3 years. As a member of the European Parliament since 2014, he has always been committed to promote and to defend the EU values in the EU neighboring countries. He also committed to bring the Western Balkans closer to the EU. And I give the floor to Patrick.
Great. Also to see you from my side, very warm welcome. And thanks, Julia, for introducing and starting our virtual meeting. I have now the pleasure to introduce our second guest speaker, Majlinda Bregu. Majlinda has been a member of the Parliament of Albania for 3 consecutive legislatures. And from 2007 and 2013, she served as a Minister of European Integration of Albania, as the longest serving minister in this function of your country. And she was also government spokesperson. Today, Majlinda holds the post of the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council, which is based in Sarajevo. We will hear more on this later. And I just was reminded by Facebook today that exactly 5 years ago in 2016, exactly today, we met in Durres at a meeting promoting also the youth with DPA youth there. So it's good exactly 5 years after this on the day to reconnect. Also, thank you for you to joining our meeting today.
Let us start with Vice President, Mr. McAllister. You're dedicating a lot of your time, expertise, and energy to the Western Balkans. You have been the European Parliament rapporteur on Serbia in the last legislative term, and since 2019, you are the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the European Parliament. Perhaps we could start by explaining to our audience the main role of the European Parliament in the EU integration process of the Western Balkans.
Yes, thank you. And also thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be in this round together with Majlinda Bregu. The European Union is still open for new members. In the moment, the European Union is holding accession talks with Montenegro and Serbia. The accession talks with Turkey factually came to a standstill in June 2018. So Montenegro and Serbia, we are holding accession negotiations. Albania and North Macedonia are further candidate countries, and Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo have the status of potential candidates. Now, what is the role of the European Parliament? The European Parliament debates and adopts once a year reports on the negotiating countries, the candidate countries, and the potential candidate countries. This gives us the chance to send political messages and guidelines by expressing our views on the status of the accession and pre-accession process. So it's our task in the European Parliament to monitor the implementation of the opening, conducting, and concluding of the accession negotiations. And finally, if a country actually in the end joins the European Union, it is the European Parliament which will have the final say to give green light to this country to join our European Union.
Thank you so much for reminding us how important the European Parliament is. I would like to go back to 18 years ago. Back in 2003, the EU member states offered the Western Balkans support for their European perspective and their future within the European Union. And if we think and see what's happening today, how would you describe the relationship between the EU and Western Balkans?
Well, indeed, the Declaration of Thessaloniki was signed in 2003, and at that time, the Western Balkan countries, all six, were offered unequivocal support for their European perspective and for their future within the European Union. And let's be clear, all six Western Balkan countries do have a European perspective. They lie at the heart of Europe. They are totally surrounded by EU member states, and all six countries are on their way towards EU membership. Of course, they are proceeding at different speeds. They have many obstacles to encounter, but they have also already encountered a number of obstacles. In the end, every single country has to be judged by its own merits. So where are we now? Serbia and Montenegro are in the middle of accession negotiations. Albania and North Macedonia are waiting for the opening of accession negotiations despite fulfilling all the requirements. And while we're talking, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is in the region just this week, and she has once again, rightly so, underlined the aim to kickstart the negotiations with the intergovernmental conferences before the end of this year. As regards Bosnia-Herzegovina, here a lot depends very much on the implementation of the 14 key priorities formulated by the European Commission, as well as on bringing the country's constitution into line with the European Convention on Human Rights by addressing electoral reforms in an inclusive manner while complying with the requirements of EU membership. And on Kosovo, I believe it is crucial that EU member states now grant the long overdue visa liberalization. So to sum up, EU enlargement process is a marathon, not a sprint. And each country's progress towards the European Union depends on its individual efforts to comply with the strict criteria, reform for improving the rule of law, fighting corruption and organized crime, and the proper functioning of democratic institutions, as well as media freedom, are fundamental, but we need to strengthen the confidence of the Western Balkans once again, and that is what this upcoming summit in Ljubljana is about.
Thank you so much. I give the floor now to Patrick.
Yes, thank you for this excellent questions and answers already in the first. But now we have two questions to the Secretary General. For you, two questions, Majlinda. First of all, also very interesting for our audience is to clarify a bit what is the Regional Cooperation Council. We see in the background good, better, regional, but what does it really mean? What are the main objectives of the RCC? And of course, what is your personal role? Maybe in the first question you could help us out here.
I will try to. So thank you very much. It's great to see you all in here. So it's great to see David after, let's say, some years from Tirana, back time, and Julia and Patrick. So great to see you too. Now, very shortly, because I don't think that I will have to pitch a lot on the RCC. 22, like let's say a quarter of century years ago, the Stability Pact was launched in Sarajevo, and it brought together that time the leaders of the world to draw an end to the wars in our region and set the course of cooperation around the peace, security, stability, and development. From that moment, that pact, so after from 13 years, let's say from now, that Stability Pact is replaced by the Regional Cooperation Council, or the Regional Cooperation Process, which is the mantra that speaks volumes on the need and necessity of the region and the economies of the region to stand by each other in a world that is changing fast. So RCC is the regional organization whose political mandate, as I said, comes from the 13 countries of Southeast Europe. but having a focus, let's say, not only on the Southeast Europe, but as well as a deeper and a closer focus on the Western Balkans and the necessity for further cooperation among the countries of the region. And I am Secretary General. That's how the Regional Cooperation Council decided to entitle the person who is leading the organization from the very first days when it was born. So I'm the Secretary General now since third year. So this is my third year in there.
Thank you very much. And you can also in these 3 years you can look back also to successes. As we know, the Balkans are now within roaming free, and we would like to congratulate you and the RCC for working hard on this. It was a longer process, but what are your conclusions from this process? What are the lessons learned, and from this best practice example? And what are the next steps? What is missing, or how can we build on this? Maybe you can answer this in the second part.
Well, thank you for mentioning one of the top stories that we are proud of as RCC Align. And beside that, I have to mention the Green Lane story, which was like the moment where all the countries and the economies of the region decided that during the pandemic crisis to keep the borders open among ourselves 24 hours to 7, as not to have any shortage of goods and medicines. And you might remember that this was really like an emergency story developed during and the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So I would say these are the last two good stories that we can share from the Western Balkans. But Rome free, it's like being, let's say, the success story of 2020. Even before Rome, like at home in the region, we had a regional roaming agreement that was signed in Belgrade in 2019. And at the first moment that was signed, we had like a reduction of the average, on average, of the prices for the outgoing calls. That started to drop, like let's say, scale by scale and step by step. And each month further on, it went through significant reductions. But from 1st of July this year, all the Western Balkan 6 can speak to each other, roam, or like use their data in their mobiles, and they will pay the same tariffs that they are paying home once they are so domestic tariffs. I have to say that this is a very good story that prevailed, let's say, out of the political pragmatism in the region, with the ultimate goal just to reduce the high roaming tariffs that we are spending in our phone calls among each other. So I'm just going to give you one example. Last year, 2020, one citizen from Western Balkans was spending on average 12 minutes making roaming calls with EU, so an EU member state, and 76 minutes in the region. But telecom operators, their profits from Western Balkan citizens roaming in EU were 30 million euros, while roughly 7, so 6.7 million euros for the roaming within our region. So you can just get the feeling of how much that was costing to us. What is going to be the next step? The promise made in Belgrade from the European Commission was that at the day when the Western Balkan region will implement and start to fully implement Roam like at home with zero cost, that will be the day that we will start building up to like having a glide path and building up, involving ourselves and dedicating ourselves into reducing the roaming charges between Western Balkans and EU. If you ask me today, this is going to be one of the topics in the summit of the Bordeaux next week. If this is going to happen in a short period of time, I cannot say it now. You can understand that this is like quite high sensitive, you know, that there are telecom operators involved on that. But I have to say that politically, there is a very good understanding, both from DigiNear and DigiConnect, that this process has to start. It might take some time, so we have already like trying to introduce a period of 5 years from this day until, let's say, when the process will be completed and we will have the first reduction of roaming charges to Western Balkans EU. But as I said, I think that this is like a must. Western Balkan citizen is paying 43 times higher while on roaming charges than you, Patrick, for example, like having your mobile, the Austrian one, and living in Brussels. So if I am doing the same, I'm going to pay 43 times higher. So I think this is the next step. And for us as well, we are proud that we'll be coordinating that further.
Thank you. Thank you so much giving us this data and putting it into the picture, also what it means in numbers and the challenges ahead. And also for reminding us, of course, of the Green Lane success story, which was very important to react and to be very practical to keep essential goods moving. So I think to conclude now, we have two questions to each of you, the same question, and I hand over to Julia.
Thank you so much to Patrick, but also to our guests. We have been talking about success stories. We have also highlighted what needs to be done by the region, but also by the EU. And now I would like to talk about the youth, because it's part of our future and it's important because they're watching us as well. The future of the region depends on the young people, but they are leaving the region, unfortunately. Mr. McAllister and Ms. Bregu, what the European Union, but also the Western Balkans could do more in order to guarantee a better future for the youth? Maybe we'll start this time with the
Julia, thank you for touching upon one, let's say, of the agendas that is quite close not only to my heart personally, but to all of us working at the RCC. And actually, we do have as well, apart from our core agendas, we do have a youth-led project. So we are trying to keep the national youth councils from the region involved in hearing about the proposals, ideas that they have. So part of the decision, you know that this is easier said than done, and especially in the Western Balkans. But that's why we are trying to open up a bit. So that's why RCC, you might see that we are like having the open talks with universities, with students as well, with youngsters that are part or they are not part of the labor market in the region. And that for us, it's quite important, because officially we have to maintain and we have an institutional responsibility to talk with and work with governments and institutions in the region. But we know and we're pretty aware of the importance of the bottom-up approach, and especially on the youth time and the youngsters of this region. So let me just give you two figures. You know that each year we have and we launch this kind of instrument, the poll, the survey that is called the Balkan Barometer. And by that, we read the perceptions of the citizens and the business community everywhere in the West. Last year, we had two additional sections. So one on COVID and the other one on the security, just to check as well if we have the same reading when we ask the citizens from the region, youth included, what do they think and how do they see the problems in the region? What is the main problem that they are facing? How that is related to the security challenges and so on. So, you know, all this cross-cutting data. So I have to tell you that the biggest problem in the region for the young people and the main worry, I think this is not something new, is unemployment. Because the average regional youth unemployment rate stands at 35%. And that is more than double of youth unemployment rate in EU, that is at 70%. So you can now get a feeling why people from the region, some because of, let's say, solid, good reasons and desire to study abroad and the EU universities are leaving the country. Some others as well, because they are pretty disappointed. And this brings me back to one of the most interesting data of our Balkan, to the institutions that are least trusted in the region. That is quite worrisome, because every time we ask people in the region, they say political parties stay on top line of being the least trusted institutions. Then they say parliament, judiciary, customs and police, or because of the bribes being used, and governments. So you know that young people and these generation, they want to get things fast. And if you see that you are not part and your country is not changing on the right direction, then they think that they have to leave. If we read the data of the total EU support from the region, it's almost the same with the numbers of the young people who are ready to leave the region. So they see the process of the European integration and European membership as of utmost importance for them. If they are not finding Europe at home, the standards, the values, the same system when it comes to their enrollment in universities, the same possibilities to find a job, not asking or pleading somebody that you know, and always there is somebody who knows somebody, or paying some money, then they say, okay, if we don't have Europe that we are looking for here, then we'll be leaving. This is one of the most delicate moments in the region. Brain drain, depopulation, and young people who are eager to leave.
Thank you so much for bringing us statistics. It's important to understand the numbers. Mr. McAllister, EPP Vice-President, is there a solution to that? Can we bring some hope to these young people?
In many Western Balkan countries, young people are the biggest asset. For instance, in Kosovo, about half of the population is under the age of 25. And EU investment in the 6 Western Balkan countries should always go hand in hand with positive long-term dividends for both the region, but especially for the next generation, because they are the future. So what can we do in practical terms? I would like to give you some examples. The first one, Majlinda already mentioned, we should begin now extending our EU roaming regulation to the Western Balkans. Second, we should fully associate the region in Horizon Europe, research and EU professional training programs. Third, we should strengthen the position of all Western Balkan countries within the framework of Erasmus+. And finally, this region does have enormous economic potential, and it is fast growing. And the region must not only be defined by politics. We have to support especially small and medium-sized enterprises to invest more in the region in order to become an investment hub within Europe. And these measures would immediately enhance also better living conditions for the young generation. Another point, I support the idea of setting up an institutional youth dialogue between Bulgaria and North Macedonia to invest in a prosperous joint future. In general, it is crucial to encourage civil society and governing authorities to take appropriate measures for historical reconciliation to overcome the divide between different ethnic and national groups. And finally, I encourage the Western Balkan countries to participate in the framework on the Conference on the Future of Europe, both at governmental but also at civil society level, including for young people. The Western Balkans are an essential part of Europe, so let's listen also to the people of the Western Balkan countries, what they have to say, how the future of Europe should look like from their point of view.
Great. And the final question goes to Patrick.
Yes, thank you, Julia. In exactly 6 days starts the Brdo Summit, Western Balkan Summit, hosted by the Slovenian, by the current rotating Slovenian EU Council presidency. And in exactly 5 days, we have our own EPP Summit, and our suitcases are almost packed. And taking with us some of your ideas would be, what would be your messages or requests to our own EPP Western Balkan leaders, but also to our own EU leaders ahead of the summit, to make this summit a success and to move forward? And Majlinda, you also have, of course, a political background. I would like to start first with you, but of course, from the perspective of the RCC, what would be the message to the political leaders to move ahead and to make this summit next week a success? We start with you, and then to conclude with our Vice President.
We are looking forward to the Brdo Summit, and I'll just give you 3 short sentences. First, regional cooperation it's quite important, but the ultimate goal should be EU membership. Secondly, EU has all the leverage to play in the Western Balkans. And that European narrative should be kept alive. Is the biggest investors, all the business community from the region would prefer to partner first with an EU member state, then some other countries. Third, which is of utmost importance, we should just try to maintain and keep the promises. The processes are difficult, and whenever it comes, and especially when it comes to the process of the EU enlargement, but it's of utmost importance to, as I said, to keep and build on the good support that is like omnipotent and present now, more than 61% from the regional level to the process of the EU membership. And then let's continue to deepen the relations among ourselves and build up a region that is stronger. The region is composed of 6 small economies. Alone and separately, we cannot really face many challenges. But on top of that, we should know that Europeanization of our countries and European integration is a transformational agenda. It's not like a date set in the calendar.
Thank you very much. We are approaching almost a half an hour, and I would like to invite and ask our Vice President to conclude also with this question. And Majlinda, you mentioned the E word, the enlargement word, and also in the declaration, the Brugge Declaration of the EU27, they are fighting, put it inside this word or not. And we know, of course, this summit is not about enlargement, but of course, the whole vision and the promises are important. But I would like to give the floor to our Vice President to conclude and give his opinion on this question.
Thank you, Patrick Voller. From the EU side, we need to address each one's difficulties and concerns, but we also need to deliver on our enlargement promises. At the same time, it is obvious we cannot compromise on our values and our rights. Our Western Balkan partners have to deliver on the necessary reforms. So the European enlargement process is and remains a process with shared responsibilities. It is about pursuing the process, sticking to promises, implementing reforms, positively communicating, and showing unambiguous dedication. So I do hope that this EU Western Balkan Summit in Brdo will be a positive one, that we have positive results, and that we can once again actually go a step further in bringing these 6 Western Balkan countries closer to the EU, because there's no region in Europe which is geographically, historically, and economically so close to us in the EU27.
Thank you so much. It was inspiring speech, a very interesting outlook, very interesting and important opinion from you, Mrs. Bregu, but also from our, of course, EPP Vice President. It has been a real pleasure talking to you. It's a pity our time is limited, but we hope to continue cooperating with you. And thank you so much, and good luck with everyday commitments to the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.